So hello, if you are watching this, we are still waiting for a couple of minutes for more people to join, and we will start soon. So hello, Okay, it's now 6:02, and we will begin the discussion on inclusive art and design from the digital perspective. A discussion is organized by Lība University Art Research Laboratory, and we work with new media arts and digital technologies, but working on inclusivity is a new topic in Latvia, and we really want to push it forward, and that this is kind of a first kick for us, this discussion on inclusive design, and we are happy that more experienced people are joining this discussion today to talk about the issues, opportunities, and challenges in the field of accessibility and inclusivity, inclusion. So tonight we have 4 speakers, and me, Anna Priedola, as the discussion moderator. I also work in Art Research Laboratory of Liepāja, and I am also artist myself. Quite recently, in the last year, I have started to work with dementia and seniors. And seniors have quite various needs in the old age, and so I am really a new world has opened for me, and I am also now looking for new methodologies and new perspectives how to work in my artistic practice. And today we are also Lība Bērziņa has joined us in this discussion. Hello, Lība. Lība is an art ambassador, artist, also art therapist, educator, and designer herself. Lība has more than 15 years of experience in NGO sector and in about inclusion. And her NGO Colorize works to foster inclusion and mental health through art. Colorize cooperates with several contemporary art institutions in Latvia and is working on fostering inclusive art and culture. And here is also from Latvia Kristiāna Kārkliņa, who is a director of Festival of Sculpture Quadrennial in Riga, artist and residency researcher, and she is an experienced design enthusiast herself, and her education is from Art Academy of Latvia, but she has worked with creative industries for 5 years, and currently she's working in a VR startup, VReach. which is an innovative startup using VR technology for working with autistic children. Here is also Amble Skuse from UK, and she's a musician and artist working with found sound, voices, electronic processing, and site-specific locations. She explores these ideas of identity and power through a lens of intersectional feminism. Her focus is on gender and disability, and she is currently studying for a PhD, or you called the PhD already, looking at ways in which disabled composer and performer can utilize technology as a tool for composing, improvising, and performing. So this is really on spot of today's discussion. And we have also here Gabrielė Gervickaitė, am I pronouncing it right, from Lithuania. And she is an interdisciplinary artist. And in her artistic practice, she works with the image we have about disabilities. Gabrielle's work is to question the various taboos of disability created through politics, media, and the beauty industry. And for example, about love, sex, and disability. And I found you writing that it seems that when disability is visible, sex rarely exists. And this is a note I want to continue, that also it seems we just very rarely see disability, at least in Liepāja. And I have been studying also here in New Media Arts, so I have been around the Media Arts study program for 10 years. And during these years, I haven't seen much disabled artists in the field, and also in our study program. I guess just one case, and this is a pity. We have this lift for wheelchairs, which is just not working anymore because it has never been used. So I don't know. But at least university has put in the next year's budgets to really check and the operations of accessibility infrastructure in university. So this is a good point. And there's another thing that in Liepāja, we are now preparing a bid. We want to become European Capital of Culture in 2027. And the big goal of Liepāja is to really raise activity of the inhabitants and to broaden the audiences for our cultural events. So one of the strategies is to make art more inclusive, for disabled creatives to feel included in the sector and professional arts field, and also for the audiences to be for the events to be more accessible, so the audiences can also grow just by including all the people that are here in Liepāja and that come visit Liepāja. So this was the long introduction, and I have read a bit of the official statements of the artists and professionals we have here, but I want to ask you, maybe you can tell more about your background with accessibility design and art, and why this is an important topic for you guys. We can maybe start with Lība. Hello.
Hi. A pretty long time working in this field, but now it's not obvious, but I will tell you that I'm a wheelchair user. So probably that's why I work in this field and it's so important for me. Although I don't work only with wheelchair users, but especially with mixed ability groups, like where very different people, they like join in the same activities and they work together. This is my passion. Like, as I see, society is really like diverse. So challenge is to how like we all together, like in a way different, can we be together and do the thing. And if thinking of accessibility of art, culture, or technologies, like this is the biggest potential of art, technologies, and everything. When it comes to a disability, then I see the point of all this, what we are doing, or when it comes to diversity, that we can use all this as a platform to include more and more different people. So yeah. That's why I think it's important for me.
Thank you for your answer. Amble, what is your background?
I'm disabled. I have a neurological condition, mainly limiting my energy, but also using a wheelchair sometimes, and various different things. And as a musician, I guess I'm limited in a lot of normal musical activities, like playing lots of gigs and touring, and so there was always this question of how can I make this work? And I use a lot of technology because I had to stop playing instruments so much because it was just too fatiguing on my body, but I could do things on laptop. And also working with laptop, I can spread out my work. So if I'm composing, I can do half an hour and then leave it and then come back and do half an hour 3 days later if I'm not well. Whereas as a performer, you have to play every single day, and you have to be ready to go out and be your best self. So there's all these questions about ableism and being a musician, and how limited you are and how you make that work, I guess. So that's where I come from in my work, is what tools do we have that mean that we can make things work, and how do we go about not just organizing our day or organizing the technology we use, but looking at how we actually structure projects and ideas and how we communicate based on the different disabilities in the room. So that's kind of where I come from. It's a social model. So it's saying that the way we do things is just an idea of how we could do them. And if disabled people aren't in the room, then it's probably because the way we're doing things aren't accessible. So we need to think about how we could do things differently. So that's very much the model that I use in my work.
Yes, thank you. A lot of your writing also helped me for preparing to this discussion, and just maybe saying out loud or trying helping to put it more precise, the thoughts we have. And Kristiāna, maybe you can tell us more about your background in this field.
Hi, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me, and it's wonderful to be here with these amazing speakers. I'm Kristiāna. I've been with Festival Sculpture Quadriennale for almost 10 years now, and for the last 4 years, I was lucky enough to also design the program for the festival. Big part of our mission is to increase the accessibility of art in the city space. That means we're now putting more emphasis on moving into city space and allowing more people to see and access the artwork, because there is this I would say almost a paradox that an NGO can find a suitable space for exhibitions, but those spaces are usually not accessible in terms of infrastructure, and that's also something that we've encountered when making exhibitions indoors. So this last year, it was because of COVID, but also because of the accessibility that we just moved our exhibition into the city space to just allow a lot more people to see artwork.
And how was your experience about the city space? Is it always accessible?
No, it is not. It is a big challenge for Riga in general to. We had this one piece on the bank of Daugava, and in order to cross the street, even like wheelchair user or just a person who wanted to approach the artwork and see it, there was only like one way how to do it, and you had to like go around like several blocks of buildings, and only then you could cross that street. And I think that's something that should be more discussed in terms of infrastructure of Riga.
Yes, I have only experience pushing the stroller with my kids, and this was a challenge in itself. Very often I was amazed when I was pregnant, then everybody was holding door for me and helping, but in the next week when I had a stroller, then suddenly I had to manage everything myself with all these kind of heavy doors and stuff. So yeah. Okay, thank you. And Gabrielė, what is your background in the field of inclusive art?
Hi.
Oh wait, yeah, we have to. Yeah, I'm currently muting my Zoom meeting. Okay, I'm here. Well, that's fucked. Somebody just got the gun in front of my face. I have 100 ping. Okay, no.
Yeah.
No.
Can you
Yeah, we should mute.
It was performance.
It was a performance. Yes.
Oh, good. It's a Zoom. Yeah. So hi for everyone, and usually I also have a physical disability, and that's also maybe a reason why I'm interested or taking care about others and the spaces where I do events or I organize my own exhibitions or other exhibitions. So for me, it's very important to put like very simple things, or for example, to find accessible buildings. If I organize by myself, it's very easy to search because there are only few. So usually, yeah. I don't know really what to say, but I think that it's very important to make an accessible spaces. But also, I'm also always question myself, what is disability in general? So, for example, if you're a mother and you have a kid, what that access you have to have, you know. I don't know, like it's not only about physical disability. Psychological and so on and so on. So how to include this diversity and to make the kind of equal access, and also at the same time very comfortable and readable. Yeah. Like,
yes. Thank you. Yeah, this is a very important question, how we define what is this disability, and not being able to do something with the various bodies we actually have and various minds we have. And yeah, I think it's often the environment which just not lets us do stuff, and not really ourselves sometimes. Maybe Amble, you have worked with a lot of theory on your PhD. Maybe you have a comment on what is disability and how you interpret it.
Yeah, I mean, I would use the social model which says that a person is disabled, but it's society that disables us. So I don't have a disability. I mean, I would go even further and say, actually, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't even like the term "what's wrong with you," because it's not wrong. It's just different from the norm. So if we think about, like, there's like a bell curve of people, right? And most people are sort of in this area, fairly similar, with similar sorts of ways of moving and communicating. And so throughout a process of industrialization, we've created a society that runs like a machine. So you do the thing that works for the majority, because if you catered for everybody, it would get really expensive. Basically, it's a capitalist idea. So if you fit within that norm, some people fit comfortably, some people have to kind of squeeze themselves into it. And so we find like work environments giving people mental health issues and stuff because they're not comfortable in that bell curve central bit. And then there are other people who are further out, who are just looking at the central bit which are being catered for and being like, I can't be that. I can't function in that way. I don't communicate in that way. I don't think in that way. I don't move in that way. I don't have the energy levels in order to maintain that kind of behavior. And so for those people, because we live in this kind of capitalist idea, it's seen as those people are expendable. Those people don't matter because there's not enough of them to really make a difference kind of politically or capitally. And what's been really interesting, for example, is like when we see disabled people for ages before COVID had been asking to work from home, had been asking for Zoom meetings. Like if you have to go 2 hours to get somewhere to have one meeting and then drive back again, somebody with a fatigue condition or a pain condition might be like, well, could I just Zoom in actually, because I need to rest, or, you know, that car journey is going to hurt. And it was refused. And then when COVID came along, suddenly everybody was working from home and everyone was Zooming. And there was this moment where disabled people were like, well, hang on a minute, I've been asking for that. But it's very much an economic decision. If you have to make all those adjustments just for one person, any economic environment is going to say, it's not worth it. It's not worth me catering to you because you are so specific. Whereas when everybody had to do it, it was either do it or go under as companies, as organizations, as businesses, as universities. And so then there was an economic case to do it. So we see this all the time. As a sort of industrialized economic model, you cater for the most kind of average central part of the bell curve. And those who are on the outside, it's simply not viable economically to figure out how to make it work for them individually, because usually most of those people have very individual ways of wanting to do things or needing to do things. So I think that's what I mean when I say I am disabled. It's the way that things are organized makes it impossible for me to do that. So for example, I saw a job advertised the other day, which I'm more than qualified for and I would love to do, but it's full-time on campus, which I can't do. So that the fact that they've said it is full-time and it has to be on campus full-time has disabled me. I wasn't disabled before that. It's the way that they've chosen to structure that particular workload that has disabled me. And in that way, we shift the responsibility from the individual onto those designing structures and designing processes and designing workflows and societies. And I think that's what I would say when I'm asked about what do we mean when we say we are disabled. It means there are things out there in the world that have been made in such a way that I'm not able to engage with them. Does that make sense?
Yes, of course. Are there maybe other opinions, like more voices on?
I want to mention and add, like, that's why probably universal design was created, these principles of universal design, because each of us has some like abilities and some disabilities. We have like, as I always say, like in general, all of us, we have like the same basic needs, but then comes like our individual needs. And that's why we sometimes don't like when people says like about people with disabilities that these are people with special needs. Like each of us has our own special needs. And then here comes this like universal design and principles of it, that actually you need to think of environment, how to make like it accessible to everyone, like to for different people in general, like different heights, different weights, different sizes, and so on. It tries to solve this problem that actually accessibility is not only for physical accessibility is not only for wheelchair user. As you said, when you had a kid, you had this experience and you understood why it's needed. So yeah.
Yes. I also think that recently have noticed these temporarily disabilities we can encounter both in senior age when they really come forward, or also in kind of the work age or capitalist work age, which is now when I'm 30, but I should be very, very able to participate in all the money making. Still, there are quite physical moments when, like, I lose eyesight because of cold and temperature differences in rooms when I come in, and other little moments. And accessible design just makes things easier when it's there for the little moments when you also have disabilities, by also just holding too much stuff in your hands or something like that. But yes, Amble, you mentioned this capitalist need for everybody to be able to make more profits, but then art, at least in Europe, usually is accessible for free, but then or for very little money because it's state funded, but then it still is very often not accessible. And when we talk about health and health needs, and then usually healthcare comes as the primary need, and then infrastructure on streets. But why would you argue to policymakers why art is necessary, why art should be inclusive and supported to be accessible? Lība?
Is that to me?
Yeah.
I think for me, art is about humans talking to each other, and when you make a piece of art, you're communicating, and when the other person watches that or engages with that piece of art, they're extrapolating from what you've made. It may not be what you intended. So art is about a series of conversations, even if you never meet somebody. If I see a painting that was made 500 years ago, that person is talking to me, and it's an incredible thing. But if we only have one kind of person making art and one kind of person receiving art, then that conversation is really limited. So, disabled people have really interesting stories, perspectives, philosophies, experiences, social commentaries. And if they're not making art and sharing those, then society is losing those stories. We're losing that way of thinking about life. We're losing that perspective. So, for example, we see so much in our culture about, oh, if you're ill, just take drugs, keep on powering through, be a man, beef up, do, you got to keep going, you got to push through the pain. And that's a really ableist narrative, because there aren't a lot of disabled people who get to make media narratives that say, do you know what, if you're ill, it's okay to rest. If you feel unwell and you don't want to do something, don't do it. It's fine. The world isn't going to end. So this kind of wisdom and knowledge that's in the disabled community never gets fed out to the non-disabled community. And I know those are kind of broad brushstrokes and that they do that cross over, like you said, but it's like some of that stuff could be really beneficial and really interesting, and we'd be richer as a society if we all talked to each other, we all listened to each other, and we all shared our stories and communicated those stories. So I mean, if you look at the story of Van Gogh and his mental health, that's a really massive and important story. That people who have mental health issues can connect with in some way, and it's really important for them to have that representation, to be like, just because I have some mental health issues, it doesn't mean I can't say beautiful and brilliant things that move other people. And so it's really important both for us to speak and be listened to, but to have that representation for other people who might be going through things and trying to work out who they are and come to terms with who they are and be okay with it. And if that's visible through art and media, then that makes it easier for those people to identify and to find a community, I think.
Thank you.
I, as an art therapist, I can name like many benefits of art. Even going to art gallery and watching art can help. It reduces stress and etc. There are many researches, and so And like it should be accessible to everyone, right? Otherwise it's like accessible only to some particular group of people, and then why it should be so. And again, like before COVID and the pandemic, we were thinking like more of art and culture maybe as entertainment, but now it's clear that it gives something more to us, like in general, maybe it gives meaning to our lives. So we really need to be able to see and to feel art, and not only online, right? Because it's not the same. And the other thing I'm thinking of is, the aim of why artists are making art, or like what is the aim? Anyway, you make it, you can keep it in your room, but you want to show it to others, and you want them to engage with your art. So again, why it should be accessible only for a particular group of people? I hope aim is to to make it visible to many different people, as many and as different you can.
Thank you.
And just to maybe, if I can add a little thought that I had while listening to my colleagues here, is that it also sort of helps us build empathy, and that is like very directly linked with how we approach designing spaces. And I'm not talking about maybe some big public space projects, but I'm talking about I don't know, how you lay out furniture in your room if you have a person coming over, whether that's a person in a wheelchair or that's a young mother with her stroller. So I think this is very important to, as Amble said already, these stories that helps us build this idea that we can also jump into other person's shoes for a short while.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The next question I have about is why, if art and this creative output is so needed, we have so little disabled artists or differently abled artists in Baltic countries, at least visible. Gabrielle, what do you think about it?
Well, I think we were talking about it before the Zoom last day. I'm thinking like it kind of should start from the beginning, from the education, from the kindergarten, from the school. Like school should be accessible, and then after universities, art academies should be accessible. Like these people with disabilities, they should have access from the early beginning. And then, for example, I don't know a lot of people with disabilities, like in art field too, but then actually, if we are talking about what is disability, then it's a bit different. But still, we don't have these people because of accessible buildings, for example, or systems. And then people can't learn in the universities, so where can they learn? So they can't participate in this art field.
Hi, sorry to interrupt, Gabrielle. Can you check if your microphone is selected the correct one, because you are very quiet for us.
Okay.
The technical background.
Yes, hi.
I don't know, I did what I did, okay. Is it better now?
Oh, this is perfect. Thank you very much. Continue.
Sorry. I wasn't in Zoom for whole summer, I think.
It's very good not to be in Zoom for a summer.
So yeah, so I think the main thing why we don't have artists from the education system, because education buildings or system is not accessible. Like Vilnius Art Academy. No, it's only one building now. It's without stairs and have elevator, but other buildings, they don't have elevators, for example, and it's very hard success. So that's one of the reasons I believe.
Mm-hmm. Lība, how is in Latvia Art Academy? As I told, in Lība University, it's also not perfect.
I study actually in the Art Academy of Latvia now, and it's not perfectly accessible, but as we know, everything now happens online. So yeah, but yeah, I was thinking of why we don't have many artists with disabilities, and the one version for me is maybe they are not like showing or telling that they have disabilities, and why? Maybe because if we think of attitude of society, maybe they are afraid that it will change society's attitude to them or to their artworks. And I should mention also the history, you know, we had, and this we are post-Soviet country, and maybe we think really different of people with disabilities, and we are not used to like be active and show our disability and or show us as we are. And maybe people are afraid of how society will react, because it's I work like around 15 years in inclusion field, but still I hear that sometimes they are making some events or something, and then they are worried of if on a stage there will be persons with disability, like what others will tell or what society will say or how they will react. And it's in a way sad, and that's why probably people don't appear much or show their different abilities. I would say not disability. Yeah, these are probably also a few of the reasons.
So are there maybe some other speculations about why? I am a bit also thinking about it. It is kind of we have a saying, a stick with two ends, because we don't see people with different abilities. We also kind of get stigmatized and afraid how to behave, how to set up the room, the stage. It becomes kind of this also, this fear or social stigma, how to really interact with each other with on different settings and with different people if we only meet one kind. So because we don't have a diverse society, it kind of becomes more and more stigmatized, and I hope by little activities we can change this, really by little steps forward of including more various kind of narratives and stories in our arts field. And to get closer to today's topic about using digital technology for inclusive design and accessibility of art. There is this famous quote we usually learned in the first years of media studies, that what Marshall McLuhan said, that media are the extensions of the human body and really help us to do more, reach more, be more able, times wise, and also to reach, overcome distance. And yes, do you feel that technology really makes you more able, more powerful, and really kind of gives you some superpower? Maybe Kristiāna?
This is a wonderful question, because as you already mentioned, this Latvian saying, a stick with two ends, it might sound strange, but it just means that the coin has two sides. But I really like how it sounds in English. I think, of course, especially during this all these lockdowns and pandemic, and not being able to go to spaces that we usually go to or that are available to us, it's it's a big part of our daily lives. And of course, if somebody would say to me, if you have to travel without your phone or Google Maps or any of these wonderful technological advances, I would be very surprised. I would be very concerned. But at the same time, it is also how we use the technology, and I don't know. I don't want to maybe. I don't want to put a strict line in between these two views, but I think sometimes we might just start using technology in a very unconscious way, I would say. For example, I don't know, you open up an Instagram and you see how your time flies, and you're suddenly 2 hours from where you started. And it depends, but of course there are things and there are technology and, I don't know, apps, devices that help us on a day, in our daily lives greatly. So it's also this two-sided coin.
Thank you, Lība. What is your experience with technology usage?
I got into deep philosophy now in my mind. I'm fan of neuroscience, so it really also says, and it's not a fiction, that actually mind is the environment and everything around us. And of course technologies too, as we use them so much. So I really believe that they were created to help us. But we sometimes are not using them so much, in a good way. But as I think I mentioned at the beginning, when it comes to the disability or the stories where technologies really help people to perceive the world, to function, it really makes sense of them and aim of them. Then I really believe that it's good that we have them. When it helps for a visually impaired to perceive the information, or when they help to make this robot hand for someone, and he or she can use the hand and do the things, or other. Then it really it's awesome. But sure, yeah, we need to think how we use them. Sometimes I feel like society, or all of us, are like small kids. There's something new invented, then we have it and we don't know how to behave with it, and we overreact. The same with a plastic, an environment, and with the technologies. And if you just scroll it, it does not make any, maybe not any, but not much sense. We need to learn how to use them, and then they can work really well for us, I believe. Yeah. But can we?
Can I join in? So I totally agree with what you've both just said there. I think, technology in itself, especially talking about internet technology, is neutral in terms of it being a tool. There are huge benefits. So, for example, I'm mainly home-based. I don't really go anywhere. And it means that I have a whole life that I can engage with through my laptop, that if we didn't have that, and I think everyone experienced that during lockdown, it is a window onto a world that if you don't have a physical world, it's an incredible way of communicating. And the speed that we can disseminate things is super important. And also, like you were saying, the way we can experience other worlds, that we can meet people in other countries and have these conversations. And, I can speak to people from 10 different countries all at the same time from my own home. It's incredible. I think the thing that universal design has kind of reacted against is, if we think about it, actually the internet is only about 20 years old in terms of global use. It is really still like the Wild West. There aren't many rules, there isn't much training, we don't really know what's going on. The next thing happens and everybody jumps on it and it's all a huge mess, and some guy in California starts influencing elections by putting up adverts. It's all it's completely like the Wild West. And then we start to see the kind of role of corporate machines starting to structure that internet in order to funnel you into certain ways of thinking, in order to funnel you into ways of spending your money, ways of socializing and consuming certain media. And I think that's where we need to start thinking about universal design, but also start thinking about, is the internet a democratic space, or is it a space where we just allow those massive voices to influence a much wider network of people? And that certainly happens in a lot of places. You know, we can all watch Netflix now, but that means we're all getting the same stuff that has been curated for us, and those algorithms start to curate as soon as you start watching it, and it pushes you down a wormhole in the same way that Google and Facebook, you know, they have the algorithms, they get to know you and they start to channel you into certain places. So I think that's where we probably need to be reacting in terms of the internet, is looking at making sure that it is a user to user experience, and that the big corporations don't get in the way and kind of hijack that and make it more of a broadcast media than an interactive media. But it does have huge benefits. We just need to be super, super careful. And I think it's no surprise that it was mainly young white men that built a lot of content that we're now experiencing. And so it's very skewed towards a certain way of thinking and a certain way of existing. And that's what we're sort of trying to chisel our way out of now. It's like reprogramming AI not to be a straight white man with, you know, right-leaning views that hasn't done any humanities research, you know. And that's the other thing, it's the humanities of the internet as well. You know, up until recently, the internet has been built by people with technical backgrounds, which is an incredible feat, but the understanding of what that does to society has been missing. And it's now a field of study, but that really needs to get in with the building of every.
I think we lost you here for a second. Hope she will come back soon. And Anna is muted.
Yes, the technology failed us.
Yeah, I was thinking of the same. They are still not perfect, right?
Not perfect. I was also now thinking about what also Amble said about technology in the making, and really as this kind of new Wild West, which we still have to develop. And then recently, of course, famous Mark Zuckerberg announced the Metaverse. And also I have worked a little bit with VR and all, you know, this crazy interface it actually needs to kind of really use this technology is a bit worrying for me. How will this Metaverse then look, and how inclusive this technology could be if it really needs, you know, tracking of where your hands are being used, and all kinds of other really gadgets and gadgets for interfacing the 3D world. Yes, how we as the little users, not people with connections, can really design the technology in the making, or how we can participate in the discourse, or what should we do to make the new technology more inclusive. Maybe Kristiāna, you have worked with startups, maybe you have heard some insight how to really shape the technology of the future.
It is, as you're saying, usually these big players are the first sort of to implement a lot of new things. Let's say VR, for example. It also has gone through waves of popularity, and currently I think it's like the second or third wave where people are actually trying to utilize this tool for us as well. But like we're working in like medical field with VReach, and virtual reality for us does exactly that. It helps us to access patients who are not able to go to the speech pathology therapists, who are not able to maybe travel long distances. They might just feel better in their own space, in their home. And of course, it was a big change when the medical services were stopped during pandemic. It helped patients to not leave the therapy. They were still being like, they had this chance to go, let's say, twice a week. They can use their gadgets at home. You can use either these controllers, or you can also use hand tracking, or there's currently also a technology that allows you just to like point with your eyes, and that is how you can move through the space. But of course, it is also not a technology, like it's not a technology that would resolve all our problems, but for some user groups, and in our cases, in VReach case, it helped people to continue get their medical services. So like it's again about how we use this technology, and of course it's a big responsibility for companies to listen to their users. Like it's just something, it's just a basic rule for every designer, for every project, to listen to your users, because we're constantly being in contact with the doctors who work with our technology, and then also with the users. And it might impact your product greatly, but it is the product that you're making for somebody to use, for somebody to benefit from. So I think it is the responsibility of companies to listen to their users. And of course, there is this capitalist aspect of companies trying to move us in the direction where we could spend money. But I hope that this will change from the pressure that society is putting more and more onto the companies.
Yes, thank you. I guess there also a new point raises if technology must be universal, or some interface can be just used for one aim, which is VR helping, in your case, to emotionally different needs, people with different needs emotionally, with autistic people, and but then we maybe need to provide other tools for people with maybe different physical needs. And we have questions also in the chat. One is about if we have seen some good artworks where technology has played a major role of creating the artwork more accessible or more easy to understand for others. Now, if Amble is back, she's really working in this field. So, but I guess we don't see her.
Can I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not answering questions. Like I think like when she came back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I also was thinking like that it's very important to create safe spaces only in real life, not only in real life, but also in internet, online, you know, like if I have a safe space, if it's accessible, so then I go there and I read and I meet and I, enjoy. So yeah, about this. I think it's important also.
Mm-hmm.
Like not to make this universal design, because I don't believe that it's possible. Maybe it's possible with some really like main rules and so on, but if we have a space where we can share our feelings and our some I don't know, activities or interests, that should be a safe space, because we're all different also.
It's if I understand it right, it's like giving options. That options are provided for everybody, that not everything is provided for everybody, but that there are options.
Yeah, like you know, like you have I don't know, nice group of people somewhere in the city, like I don't know, like social center, or like activist group or artist group or gallery, and you go there and meet your friends and so on. The same we can create online, I believe. Hi, Amble.
Hello. We were waiting you back. As there is a question in the chat, can you comment on artworks where technology has played a major role for creating the artwork and art more accessible to people, where really technology is used? And you really have used technology in live coding for differently abled musicians and with differently abled musicians. Maybe you can comment on your experience.
Yeah, we made an opera called We Ask These Questions of Everybody. During the lockdown, we had already planned to make it remotely. The lockdown made it a bit more complicated because we couldn't get any technicians into the homes of the singers and the musicians, which would have been ideal. But basically we rehearsed and recorded, well, we rehearsed everything over Zoom, and each musician was sent their own recording gear, so they had like a little sound interface and a mic and a cable and a stand, and we worked with them to like get the best sound, and then they would send over their recordings to me and I would check them, and then we would rehearse some more over Zoom, and by doing that we were kind of able to work together in a way that people with energy limiting conditions basically can't. So there was 3 of us on the team that had energy limiting conditions, and then 4. And one was deaf and a wheelchair user. One is blind that doesn't have an energy limiting condition, and the other person is paraplegic. And then there was the 3 of us who have an energy limiting conditions. And if we'd had to rehearse that, we all live in different cities as well. So we would have had to have chosen one city, booked accommodation, and then gone in and worked in a room together, which I think if we'd done that would have meant much shorter rehearsal periods, because we would have been completely exhausted. But because we were rehearsing it on Zoom, we could rehearse and then just go to bed in our own homes or have lunch in our own homes and not worry about like, where's my hotel? How am I going to get there? And have to go to the shop and buy this. I don't know where I am. You know, all of those things that completely just make it really hard to get around, especially if you're a wheelchair user and you don't know where the nearest services are that you can get into, and you know, shops that you don't know your way around, and you get super tired. So by doing everything online, we kind of made it possible. And then obviously, well, not obviously, we made a kind of captioned opera. So there's no visuals apart from just the words, but they're kind of creatively captioned. So you've got somebody sort of typing into an email and the words pop up on the screen, or somebody putting a question into Google as people speak. So for people who were hearing impaired, they could watch the text of the opera as they were listening to it. And we streamed it online as part of a festival. And we also made sure it wasn't just streamed once, it was available over a period of time, so people who weren't feeling up to it on that particular day, or maybe their carer wasn't there to help set up the laptop for them, they could watch it at any point over the next month that suited them, when they had the right support to kind of log in and watch it. There's more I think we would have liked to have done. Like, I really wanted to do different mixes of the opera, so people with different hearing impairments could maybe boost up the words or boost up the bass, or, you know, just organize it in a way that suited the way they hear things. That wasn't something we sort of had the time to do, but I think overall it was really sort of positive experience for the musicians and hopefully for the audience as well, to just be able to access it from their home when it suited them and they didn't have to go anywhere or worry about traveling or so that's kind of like the most sort of technologically accessible piece I've done, I suppose.
I have a few examples also of when technology changed or made art more accessible. As I work more with visual art, it's always challenging how to show it for people who has a visual impairment. So as it's very visual, so how can they perceive it? Usually for persons with hearing impairment, it's easier to perceive it as they see, but they don't hear. So you need to think of how you can adjust like audio. But for persons with visual impairment, they don't see the art and how they can perceive it, and not always they can touch it. So I know examples where it was about books where 3D prints were made so people with visual impairment or blind can really understand what is about, like some details of it, so they can could touch and really like feel the shape of something, because it's not easy always to explain how it could look or how was it. And the other also similar technique with paintings. When you go to art gallery and there are like really famous and very expensive paintings, you cannot touch them, go just and feel them. So 3D prints were made, so persons with visual impairment or blind could touch them and then understand what's in it. So otherwise everyone talks about them, they are so famous, so expensive, but it was totally like blank field for them, so they could experience like what is there and what is that. And these are only a few examples, the first ones which come to my mind.
And things like voiceover and stuff like that. So, just having an app so that if you go and watch a theatre show, like so for blind people, you put your headphones on and you can hear the show, but you also hear somebody saying, David is wearing a blue shirt and he's walking from left to right of the stage. And all of this is just on the app. So you just tap it, and as the show starts, you get descriptions of what's happening, and there's just somebody sitting backstage describing it to you as it happens. And it also works for people with hearing impairments. If you're sitting in the theatre and you're thinking, what is he saying, you can have the headphones on and you can just have like Hearing Loop is like a really basic version of it. It's just a way of amplifying the sound. And then similarly, with Zoom projection, you have stuff like the Royal Opera House live streaming into your house, so if you're not able to get up and go to a show, then you can still experience the show from your home. So all of those things are just like super important, that things that technology have enabled us to do.
And we have also a question about what we talk about when we refer to the digital technology. And are we talking about gadgets, social media, other stuff that most people consume every day, or we also include VR, AR, and other technology? And from my perspective, there's a big difference with analog technology and digital technology. The digital is written. It's a lot about software, so we can really change things quite easily, not unlike in analog technology where it really works because of the physical principle. But and digital, these digital and soft technologies which are written, they take up a little space. They can all be put in the gadget we always take together with us, like smartphones and laptops, and really in very, very quite quick time, with little expense, we can really create solutions, interfaces for different needs and different applications. This is why I think we should talk about creating creating new technology that is inclusive, because this is relatively not hard nowadays, and it does not take a lot of resources. And also here, where we study new media arts in Liepāja, we talk a lot about interfaces, really how we create technology, how it looks, and how we can interact with it. And yes, I was also amazed now with the video phones. Finally, people who have hearing disability or impairment can use the screen to use sign language when talking to each other, which was not able using the analog phone. So yeah, there is just this huge possibility now, really this huge opportunity just to use and tackle and create new technology, new applications we can use. Maybe some other thoughts on the possibilities of digital technology.
I think, like you were saying, like software is easy to create, and it doesn't have to, you can copy and paste. You don't have to like build a new thing for every single person. And I think that's where it really comes into its own, because we can make things customizable. So, for example, making, if you have a piece of music software, you might want to make the windows interchangeable. And so you can make one really big, or you can make one green, and you can make one blue, or those sorts of things make a huge difference. If people are struggling with the layout or the font size or the color or the background, if you can make that changeable when you build the software, then anybody who comes to it, if they need to adjust the way it looks, they can. At the moment, we generally have Zoom or not Zoom, and a couple of websites you can have like a white text on a blue background. But I think that's a really key issue that seems to come up a lot for disabled people. It's just, I want to be able to put that window where I need it to be. So a friend of mine, John Kelly, he has limb difference, so his arms are really short, and he was saying like he can't reach the new control bars at the back of the Mac. So he's got this brand new Mac, and a lot of the functions are now on that touch strip, and he can't reach it because his arms are. And so if that was customizable, if he could choose to have that on or off, it would make a huge difference to him. But it's not customizable, it's built in. Or if that touch bar was in a different place or removable, or I think making things individualized, making things so that they can be individualized, making things so that people can suit them to their bodies and their communication needs and their way of processing. Just as like a really stupid example, I was trying to work with Ableton today, and the text was so small because I'm a stupid old lady. I was just like peering at the screen with a magnifying glass, and in the end I just ended up using Logic, because you can make the font bigger on Logic. And that's not even because I'm disabled, it's just because I'm not a 25-year-old young man. I'm 45 and my sight's going, and it's like I physically can't use this music processing software because it's too small. So I'm going to have to now buy a screen and blow up my, it's like, could you just have a zoom in button, please? It's that kind of thing. It's like making everything customizable so that whatever the person needs, they can make it work.
Yeah, especially with digital technology, new media. Like Gervickaitė has written this book, The Principles of New Media, and there are 5, and one of them is variability, that everything you make in digital world is variable, but then because of how the code is written, it sometimes is not, the applications, there's not a button that allows you click and choose the font size. So these are things that are not so hard to be tackled and should be taken care of.
Exactly, and it just brings us back to how companies and product developers interact with their clients, with their users. And it's just, for me, it seems, especially now working with VReach, it's just such a very basic thing to do, to go out and ask different user groups and proactively talk to people about how they are using this. I love this Ableton example. Like, this is also a tool that I use in sometimes in my life, but like, I've never encountered like a proactive, hey, we want to hear your opinion about how this thing works. And I mean, of course, not all of us, we don't really always have the time to go to the companies and say, hey, you need to do this. But if I feel that my opinion as a user, as a person who pays money for this product is valued, then of course it's for me, it seems important to also like maybe spend a little bit of my time and just to maybe even make this product better for other people. Like the sense of that this might also help other users, other musicians.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think the other really important thing is that when we're talking about people who make things, designers, especially in media, we need to make sure that all the people who are in that room have a varied experience and varied life experiences. So often, you know, I was at the Audio Developer Conference a couple of weeks ago, and it was just a room of 20-something-year-old white men. And they were like, well, how do we do disability? And it's like, well, you need to train disabled people up so that they become audio developers, so you don't even need to ask that question because the person making it knows the answer. You know, it's not just about, oh, here's a bunch of focus groups, although I don't mean to undermine what you're saying. It's super important that they ask. But I think for me, the next step is, why aren't there any disabled people in that room? Why aren't there any women in that room? Why aren't there any middle-aged women who like knitting? You know, what is the process where those people are getting filtered out so that there's only young white men in that room, and they're just sitting there going, well, we didn't know. So I think for me, that's the next step, and that's why this sort of thing is so important, that when you're working with students, we need to make sure we're not accidentally filtering out the disabled voices, we're not accidentally filtering out the women who so often working in sound, they think, oh, I've had enough of all of this, you know, sexist nonsense, I'll just go and work in sonic arts instead because it's a more comfortable place for me to be. And so through the culture of the place, people end up moving sideways until there aren't any women left. And then the men who were in those conferences go, well, it's not our fault, the women aren't here. You know, if they wanted to be here, they should be here. But we don't look at the culture and the processes that have led those women to leave, because it's not a case of men are good at this, women aren't. It's a case of, you know, lots of women and men are both interested in this, but for some reason, by the time we get to the professional level, the women have all left the room and the disabled people probably never got there because the training wasn't accessible, or they couldn't afford to go to university, or they couldn't do full days, they couldn't do full time, or they couldn't get into the room where the studio was, and so, you know, it didn't happen for them. So we need to look at why those people aren't the designers, because that's like the end game of inclusive design for me, is that the designers should be a really varied bunch of people, so that we don't need to be knocking on the door going, excuse me, could you change stuff, please? Do you know what I mean? I think that's the most important thing, is like moving disabled people and women into that field so that it starts to change root and branch. I'm going to stop talking now.
It's really extremely important what you said, and what sometimes happens in Latvia, that you know, they ask once like how we should do this and that and what you need, and then it stops. But you need to be in a touch constantly, because details are really important. And there's this cliche saying, you know, nothing about us without us. So it's really about the thing, yeah.
But also I believe that a lot of people, they don't know what they don't know what can work for them. Like you, I believe, like really working with technologies, you really, or I know what they really need, but other people, they just don't know. They know that it's not comfortable, but how to make it really nice, accessible and comfortable. if you ask, I don't know, I don't like this program, I'm not going to use it.
Yes, this of course again makes me think about the education of the so-called special schools, where everything is very simplified and just drawn to the basic minimum, I guess, not really alternative per se. For example, the digital technology or some kind of technological issue, solutions are maybe not introduced, but I am also not expert of the so-called special education, but we call it in Latvia like that. So it could be one of the strategies where to really kind of start to change the situation, to introduce more opportunities also for varied kind of people.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that Gabrielle made, and I think that's where we really need more people working in that field, like in fields of research and communication and support, and working with people and really unpicking, like, what is it about that that's hard? Why don't you work with that stuff? Because like you say, Gabrielle, a lot of people just go, oh, I can't do it. But if we had people that were researchers that could unpick all of those questions, then we can help to verbalize that. And I don't mean we say it for them, but we support them in, and some people feel comfortable with that and some people won't, but it is super important to help people. It's almost like an access statement to say, this is how I need things to be in order for it to work for me. There's a harp player I know called Steph. In one of the interviews I did with her, she said, you have to walk into the room with a list of solutions, because otherwise all they're going to see is problems. And it really is like the onus is on the disabled person at the moment to say, okay, yeah, I know this looks bad from your perspective, but actually if we do it like this and this and this and this, then I can deliver. And I don't believe that's how it should be, but that's kind of how it is at the moment. And until that the disabled people are skilled and supported in making that access statement of, this is how I do things and this is how I can best deliver whatever that is, or engage or take part, then people who aren't able to make that statement or don't know what they need in order to make that real are very much just pushed to the sidelines. It's because people feel like, if you're not going to come at me with solutions, I haven't got the time to try and fix stuff for you. And it's like a really, again, it goes back to that kind of time is money, productivity conversation. You know, people, we don't have like a field of people who are working with disabled people to really unpick, okay, what would make it work for you? Like, if we did it like this, how about if we did it like this? What are the options? Maybe I could bring in 4 different things and you could tell me how you feel about them. Like, that's definitely a field of work that needs to be kind of supported. I think Gabrielle makes a really strong point there.
Yes, also agree. And I wanted to tackle this hot topic of AI solutions to everything nowadays, because on one conference I was on a panel where there was a guy working on video editing with visually impaired people, where AI is used to really verbalize everything that is on the video footage, so people can edit it with also designed hardware. And so it seems like a new world of possibilities where AI really takes care of these little tasks that people are too lazy to do. Like, for example, adding subtitles to video images, also adding this image to speech translations of visual images to, again, audio information. And do you see AI as only kind of this promising technology, or you see also some kind of challenges there, or things we should be kind of careful about?
I really liked what you said about these little tasks that we are lazy to do. And I believe the more we can do these tasks automatically, the more we can give people time and space to work on their creative ideas. Because, I mean, I think it's a wonderful tool if you can just automatically add subtitles to your video or whatever. You don't really want to do that as an artist. You want to think about composition, you want to think about sound, you want to think about lights, like, I don't know, whichever art form you are addressing. But of course, on the other hand, like there's this binary, like opposition thing with how we use this this opportunity as well, because of course we can see that there is a big risk in terms of what data is gathered from us using things, and we still haven't gotten like our heads around how we could regulate that with legislation, and how we avoid these situations where, for example, there is this great documentary about Axon body cameras. It just recently got out. I think it's 2021. It's called All Light Everything or something like that. And there again, you can see this wonderful piece of technology that could potentially help decrease police violence, to help people get an objective view of what happened if there is a confrontation between a person and a police person. But then again, you see that there is this risk of just moving into the space where our rights to privacy is also very heavily yeah, I mean, very heavily impacted. And so what I wanted to say is that there is this great part about freeing our artistic minds from these repetitive tasks. But then again, we need to consider how we allow to use the data that these solutions are based upon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes down to, again, that kind of straight white male training that a lot of AI has undergone, you know. So when they made the Twitbot, an AI Twitter bot, then within 24 hours it had like turned into this crazy Nazi spewing hate speech all over Twitter, because it was just harvesting. And because, you know, the majority of stuff it was harvesting was from one particular type of person, it said, oh, that's what people want. So again, I think it's about making sure that when we're harvesting from a really wide sample of people, and that AI knows that there are lots of different perspectives, and it's not just about going, oh, well, that's the majority of what I got, so that must be right. And again, it's just about creating diversity across the board, and people that are training the AI, the places that AI is looking for information, and the way that AI is being built, and trying to diversify its perspectives and listen to a really wide range of voices, rather than just the kind of dominant Reddit 4chan kind of voice, which it drinks so much of. So I think that's a real kind of key issue with AI, and you know, there are people working on that. So the Inclusive Design Research Centre in Toronto, they have like a whole team which is looking at diversifying AI, and like looking at using the global south as like a testing ground for harvesting AI and stuff. But again, as you said, like people's data and people's privacy is really important in that kind of conversation as well. So it's difficult to know, but if you can automate tasks where subtitles are automatic and voiceovers are automatic, then that's amazing for a lot of disabled people who rely on them happening. All you've got to do is press a button and it happens. That's a whole new world for a lot of disabled people. So like you say, the stick has two ends. I've learned a new phrase.
Okay, we are also getting closer to the 8, the final 8, and in Latvia as the final discussion time. But we still have a half an hour for a couple more questions. And yeah, talking about AI, this seems a task which still needs a lot of work and care and consideration, but then there are much more easier solutions to making things more accessible in digital realm, and also just visual realm, just for example, visually making higher contrast, bigger letters of text, and other really simple solutions. But also coming from the arts field and seeing a lot of designs of artist web pages, which I also don't understand and can't really notice where things can be found, and everything is like super ambiguous. And then this question arises, if at some point artists must kind of make this choice between aesthetics and accessibility. What is the right choice? What is the ethical choice? How do you think? Lība, maybe you as inclusive art expert can tell your experiences in this.
Life is about balance, right? But it's the border is really like narrow, like where it's aesthetic, where it's accessible, and where it's not accessible anymore, and vice versa. So we need to find the middle way, and accessible not always means not aesthetic. Sometimes we misunderstood the rules of accessibility, and for example, that contrast needs to be black and white. It's not so. It can be any color as far as it has contrast. You can check it on a screen, and so and then the different things. So you need to be really creative and think out of the box, which like accessibility is really about creativity. Without creativity, my life wouldn't be possible. I would just stay home and that's it, And the same with the digital accessibility. You need to think outside the box and find the middle way, which is not always easy, but it's possible. And again, you can check and ask for people so they can try what you've made and tell you is it working or not, and again make your changes if needed. What is the aim for what we make it, like really so it really works, or we just have a money for the project, we made it accessible, that's it, check. But if we really want to make it look beautiful and people use it, so we need to work more on it.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think there's also like I don't know if any of you saw this story about ZKM in Karlsruhe last week, but they presented an award to I forget the name of the artist duo. They're a black duo, and in presenting the award, the guy from ZKM said, of course, we've had to try and deal with the dichotomy of diversity versus quality. And quite rightly, the artists walked out. They were like, no. And I think it's the same thing with accessibility. I think we have this false narrative that things that are accessible are ugly and clunky and horrible. And I think that's because we haven't had any input to making accessible things fun and pretty and gorgeous. Like, if you think about the horrible grey walking sticks you get, like, why can't I have a walking stick that matches my outfit? Like, just because no one cares enough to bother making them, or because there's not an economic market, But, these ideas that everything to do with disability is ugly and clunky and normal people won't like it. It's a really false dichotomy, and you can make beautiful work that's also accessible. And I think, you know, the more we kind of strive for that as artists and be like, okay, this can be accessible and it can be beautiful, and I'm not going to fall into that false dichotomy of like, oh, if I make it accessible it ruins the art, or if I make it really pretty it's not accessible. I think it's possible, like you say, there's a third way. I think it's possible for things to be accessible and stunningly beautiful and aesthetic. It's just that we have to put the work in and create it ourselves, because there aren't many models of it happening. There's a thing that Birds of Paradise Opera theatre company do in Scotland, where they do like inclusive signing and inclusive communication. So rather than just like having subtitles, they have one of the characters on stage who might be deaf, and like maybe she's on like a video call to her friend as a character, and so she's telling her friend what's happening on stage. So it works for the audience, but she's a character in her own right. She's not just a person standing in a t-shirt on the side of the screen doing her sign language. She is a character, she has stories, she has jokes, she has interaction with the other people, but everything she does is involved in making what's happening on stage more accessible to the people that need her translation. And it's beautiful and it's fun and it's creative. It doesn't have to be like, here's the theatre, here's the signer. Like, that person can be a part of the show, and it can be done really creatively, but we just have to figure it out and do it ourselves. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a very important point, because like if the question comes up, whether to make this, I don't know, website accessible or pretty, then you have to like start over. That's not a question which you should start from, because I mean, design. I like this sort of saying that design, it is a movement. Like, you have to design something for something. And if I was humored by the example of the artistic websites where you cannot really find where is the portfolio, or where you can see, I don't know, whatever works. Or but I mean, it's important to just sort of step out of maybe these conventional sort of layouts that we might have in our heads, how a beautiful design should look, or if I have to think about inclusivity, then oh my God, I'm desperate. So no, that just means you have to start from the scratch and actually talk to people, or invite people in your project, or just give the agency to people to actually say what they need in order to use that product. And of course, the product also most times carries a function. If it is a portfolio, you want people to be able to access the information. Like, I mean, yeah.
Gabrielle, how are you doing in the darkness? Still.
Wow, it's very interesting. I'm waiting for electricity. I don't know.
You're busy with the things. I was just wondering how it's you for you. Have you also noticed such kind of discussions about the aesthetics and making things understandable or ambiguous in art? And does it matter in the context of accessibility?
For example, last year I had an exhibition, and the gallery was at the ground floor, but it still had a few stairs inside gallery. So I built a ramp for my exhibition. It was kind of invisible, like some people didn't recognize it. It was so natural. It really was like in the architecture of the gallery. And I was like, I don't mind that it could stay for a longer time or for the future, but they didn't leave it because there was another exhibition of artists, and he didn't want to have his ramp because it didn't fit to his art piece. So that was my thing, and it's about to move someone's ass, but to make things, If we think only about their art and ourselves, so good luck. And also I'm in this position. I'm very tired of this. Like, okay, we need ramp, we need this one. It's enough. I'm tired. I want to have it. Come on now. But yeah, I understand that it's impossible. But little by little, I'm teaching and telling people like, no, it doesn't work like that.
Thank you.
But of course, it's always. I think it's always, and it will be for some time for sure. Like art will, like aesthetics will win because of
There's
the
also
money,
that-
of course.
Sorry. There's also that kind of question of like, why should I care? So I did a lecture at Glasgow University, and one of the students came up to me at the end, and he was like, but I just want to play piano. Like, why should I care about disabled people hearing me or not? Like, it doesn't matter to me whether they hear it. And I was just like, oh my God, like how do we even answer that question? Like, what doesn't matter to me? Like, why should I go to all this trouble? Like, I just want to play piano. It's like, oh, okay. I'm just interested to know what other people might think of that.
I don't know, it reminds me of this work of Kristiānas and Kim I saw in Frankfurt last month in an exhibition, Crip Art, and she had these drawings, graphic art of degrees of my death rage in different situations and in the art world too. And I guess it's also sometimes we write all these art projects and then there's also no funding for example, translations and then this artist also had this death rage in the art world, and that sometimes she needs to split her fee with translators and transcribers, because it's just not in the budget. And there's no categories. It's not kind of taking care of the system. So yeah, also kind of this kind of seemed a bit similar problem, that there's just not such a category in the funding or something like there. We just say, yeah, there's not enough money, and so we don't do it. Don't care.
Yeah, that links to is it Mara who's asked a question? She's saying like, why should engineers, entrepreneurs spend extra time and money to think about accessibility? Is there any other reason apart from saying that anyone at some point can become at least temporarily disabled? And it is that question that I think that's why it has to be put in policy and it has to be put in arts funding, that, I think we have this term in the UK called reasonable adjustment. So you have to do it unless you can make a really good business case for not doing it. So like Edinburgh Festival is a nightmare, but their business case is that lots of these buildings are very, very old and listed, and they're very tall and they have very old staircases, and there just isn't a way to put ramps in. But if you can't make a really good case for why you haven't done it, then you're at risk of prosecution under the Discrimination Act. So I think things like that, like the Discrimination Act, are really important. to say, look, you have to do this, because I think, like Mara says, otherwise people will just be like, well, it's not my problem and it's going to cost more to do it, so let's just not bother. So unless there's like something hanging over them saying, you know, unless you've got a really good reason for not doing this, like it's a listed building that can't be adjusted in any way, then you have to do this, you have to put this in, otherwise you'll be prosecuted and fined. So then like it becomes a financial imperative to do it, because otherwise it'll cost you more not to do it because you'll be fined. But for individuals, it's a really hard conversation. Like, one answer that I've given is that, well, I'm a disabled person, and if I'm not coming to your concert, I'm not buying a ticket. And there's a lot of disabled people who will come to things and will buy tickets, but if you don't make it accessible, then you've just lost that 10 euros. And then the other argument I gave him was that because I know that I've given you this lecture, I know that you now understand the basics of it, and if you don't do it, you will know you're a bad person, and you'll know that I think that. Like, what else can I say? Like, you know, you should be doing this stuff. And he was kind of like, right, okay, that's weird, but what else can you say? Like, come on, don't be an arse. Like, ah. But the financial argument is the only one I could really make that was logical. It's like, we've got money to spend, we want to go to stuff, why don't you want to take my money? But yeah, has anyone else got any ideas about that?
Yeah, and
apart from you're an awful.
Not only 10 euros, but the most probably you will not go alone. So you will go with someone. So it's really money. And there were these researchers in the United States on universal design and accessibility that it really like helps you to make money. For example, what are the most accessible places in Latvia? Shopping malls, because they know that accessibility brings money. You can go there, you can do everything there. You have a toilet, you can live there. Really, you can live there if you are a wheelchair user and spend all your money there. So, but I think it's a kind of stereotype that accessibility is expensive, because if you build a building and if you think really smart before doing it, you can make it accessible, really not very expensive, not much more expensive than building it wrong and then rebuilding it again accessible. So it will spend your money more. And yeah, I want that actually there is no such a question in general in society why we need to do this, because it's more than clear that we are diverse, and you build public building, so it should be accessible for everyone. Or if it's a homepage or any digital solution, if you make it, you think of how you can make it accessible, like to everyone, to different people, different ages, kids. We sometimes forget about kids. You go in a hotel and there is this, high table and kids are somewhere under it there. Only some hotels have like small tables where kids can also go. And you can imagine how kid feels in the society where she or he is mom goes, she's tall, or if she walks, she goes and pulls small kid with her everywhere, yeah, and you are small human walking everywhere around, and everything is so high and big and not accessible. So maybe even only because of kids, we should think more of accessibility for different people. That is also a good question, yeah.
We have a question from the audience. Is an artwork still the same artwork when it's translated or augmented in different mediums for different disabled people? I guess there could be like examples of Joseph Koschut's, different representations, 3 different chairs. So maybe an example of an artwork that maybe uses meaning or gains another meaning.
I was thinking that any artwork is perceived each person perceives it differently. So how can you give one meaning or one explanation of it? Even if you will say it in the same words, each of us will understand it in a different way. So I think there's no so big risk to lose meaning of artwork if you interpret in different media or ways, but it's my opinion.
I tend to agree with because if the work has of course, not always artists can know what he, she, they create. As you said, that there's like each person resonates differently with different pieces, but sometimes you can just feel that there is this code, that there is this information, and as long as it is there in the artwork, I don't think whatever form it will take, it will still be the same message, the same code. I would not even say message, like the same code, the little molecule that carries this meaning. So I tend to agree that like.
And now there's another kind of addition. If a painter should concern himself with the needs of visually impaired people, and if the artwork does not lose the aura, if it's like this one original piece.
Could I just go back to the last thing we were talking about? Sorry, I think again it's like building the accessibility into the creativity. So if you're talking about an old artwork, it's like, well, how, by making it accessible, do we change it? Have we ruined it? Is it different? Is the accessible bit wrong, or do the blind people getting the voiceover have a different experience with the artwork to other people? And again, it's like adapting buildings, like Lība was saying. If you build it wrong in the first place, then you have to then spend money changing it, and then it becomes like a half thing that never was, and it's not the same building, and it's not what the architect wanted, blah blah blah. But if we, from here on in, if we start thinking whenever we make something, we make it accessible, then we don't have that question about oh, I've made it accessible, is it now less of an artwork, or is it changed? Because the accessibility is built into it from the beginning, and that's always a part of what you're trying to achieve, I guess.
And there,
Yeah,
I think
sorry.
is the answer for the question. There was a question, and then someone answered to his or her own question, because that's the point. Never everyone will perceive it the same. Never everyone will understand it the same. And we need to think that, for example, if there's a painting and blind person comes, there's nothing for him or her. Maybe it's better to make some interpretation of it, so a person can at least imagine like what's there, or what about is it, and to show that you are friendly to different people, and that they can at least try to imagine what's there. Surely they will understand it differently.
Also, the majority of blind people have not been blind since birth. It's a very small portion, it's like 4%. And so if you describe a painting to a lot of blind or visually impaired people, they will conjure beautiful images in their mind. But if you don't describe it to them, they have nothing to work on. It's just, a blank space. And so a lot of blind people who go to art galleries go there so that their friends and their relatives can describe these beautiful images to them, and they can conjure them in their own mind. And that's an amazing way of interacting with an artwork, because I'm not just seeing what the artist has given me, but I'm also hearing the words that my friend has chosen to use to describe how they feel about it. And then I'm creating a thing inside my own head for myself. Like, that's a 3-way creative process. It's just incredible and beautiful. So I think having some kind of language to describe a visual image is really important, and can give a lot of joy and communication to blind people in visual arts galleries.
Thank you. Actually, this percentage is really small, and it also makes me think that, also in advertising we so often divide people in target groups, but the borders between the groups and the needs are very, very kind of dissoluted, very various. Like, there's just a big spectrum of abilities and needs, and to just say that it is not for blind people, it's it's just a very various spectrum of the needs and how we can perceive things. Yeah, it's soon to be the ending time of this discussion. So I wanted to ask the final question. We have hopefully a lot of art students listening to this discussion also on YouTube, and it will also be there for their usage for more, because they have to study a bit of design and interaction design. So what would be your kind of tips and tricks how to checklist if their creations are accessible, how to start thinking about accessible creativity, accessible design, and art also? What would be kind of like a checklist, or maybe you got some thoughts to inspire them to work on it?
Maybe I can then start, because I see in the chat there's also a thought about should artists think of accessibility or anything if when he or she creates the artwork? And this is the nice question. We could make other discussion about it, how accessibility influences art, or should it or not, and how it could work. But anyway, I believe when you put your artwork in exhibition, you will not put it in a really like dark room where no one sees, or in a box, but maybe it depends of idea, right? Maybe it could be also like this. But you will most probably put some light on, some description, something, so you want to explain it to others, like so they understand or try to catch your idea, but the most probably they will not. And again, as we see actually in Latvia, how people perceive contemporary art, so it's really like something strange for most of the society, and they can react like really in a different ways, and it's always risk. But yeah, as you display your art, probably you want to make it visible to some, and as we talked, like you need to think of different people will come to your gallery. If your grandfather or grandmother comes to gallery, like how they will they be able to read descriptions, or will they understand catalog, which is also many times in different language. And we even did not talk about persons with mental health issues, and so, or the ones who for the ones who to whom it's hard to like read or understand, like etc. 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 So, but anyway, everyone can keep this question to him or herself, like, should it influence artwork or process, or should it be accessible? It's on your personal heart, or how could I say? But if according to giving tips, I actually worked on a guidelines. I could share them, or here in chat. They are in Latvian, and maybe then Anna, later you can also share them to students. There are some guidelines made especially for creative people, as we say, like in a way, so it's easier to understand, like, of what you need to think to make venues or artworks accessible, because there are many different like guidelines and information all around the world. You can find it, but we've put it in one guidelines where are links, and you can find more, but the main things of what you need to think if you think of accessibility. So yeah, it was not shortly, but and I want to say thank you, Anna, for making this discussion, because it's first step, and I'm really happy that there are questions and there is really discussion going on. As you said, it's a kind of new thing in Latvia, and I'm really working on inclusion in art and culture field. It's not easy, but small steps by step we will make the change, and we are making the change with this discussion, and each of us with all these small steps thinking of a diverse society. Thank you.
Thank you, Lība, yes, for your input and time you found to join us.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say like in terms of giving tips, I won't give like a practical tips, because I think Lība's really covered a lot of that, and it looks awesome. I'm going to put it in Google Translate. It's just like, I just opened it, it's like, wow. But I would say, like, don't think of accessibility as a chore, or don't think of accessibility as something that's going to ruin the thing that you want to make. Think of accessibility as a creative challenge. It's like, I have to make these things, and one of the parameters of this thing is that it has to be accessible, and that's a creative challenge. How can I do that and still be the artist I want to be? How can I take all of that into consideration and turn it into a beautiful, wonderful, meaningful thing that I am proud of? It's a creative challenge. It's not a drag. It's not something that's going to hold you back. It's not something that's going to ruin your vision. It's something that's going to push you into a new way of thinking, and it's going to revolutionize the way you make your work. And it's a super exciting thing to try and figure out. You know, when you look at all those guidelines, you think, God, how on earth am I going to do this? And that's part of the making of it. It's like, you know, when you get a big bit of rock and you're like, oh God, I've got to turn this into a horse, bloody hell. You know, it's the same thing. It's a creative kind of challenge. And I think if you approach it that way, it becomes fun, and it doesn't become like, oh God, we've got to do that again. Ugh, you know. It's about making it fun. It's about making it part of your creativity, and then it all flows, I hope. And thank you so much for inviting me. It's been so great to meet you all, and I want to keep in touch. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, yeah, for joining. And yes, it is inspirational. It reminds me of the nostalgia Latvia has about Soviet time music. That this was the best type of the lyrics in music, because you just could not express kind of easily, but you had the challenge to overcome, and that it kind of sparkled more imagination. I don't know if it is true. It has also some bad connotation about like censorship. I don't want to put this into this context, but just that, yeah, challenges are inspirational. And also in media art, we often kind of meet challenges, because every medium has this kind of specific output, and you have to think how to put your ideas through this one medium. It again gives you kind of more ideas how to make things more abstract. And yeah, so yes, thank you. It was really inspiring. Kristiāna.
I'm gonna just be the dark sheep, and I'm just gonna share a couple of methodologies that I really use, and that helps me to get a better sense, especially when creating a product for something, or an event for something. We already talked about this a lot. Talk to people, listen to people, include different people in your team, work with people who are already a part of maybe the field you are researching and you are creating a solution for. There is this very simple methodology that most of the students might already know. It's creating a journey map for, like, you create a user, and then you put him through the journey with interaction with your product. I also use 5E methodology, which is a methodology created by KS Pilot, and it sort of helps to dissect how people interact with, let's say you are creating an arts festival. This helps you get an overview of what this event will consist of, and how people will go through this event. And that is also a way how you can just pinpoint things that you still need to work on. And in this context, you might just identify the points where you need to think about accessibility more, or like how it all sort of integrates into your process. So these are my couple couple of practical tips. And once again, thank you for inviting me. And it was wonderful to meet you all. And I agree with Amble that I would also love to keep in touch with this wonderful panel. Yeah, and thank you, Lība, for creating these guidelines. This is something that needs, like, we need to get these guidelines out and spread the word. And our festival will also share these on our site. Yeah.
Yes, especially for all the institutions, it's really needed to spread the information, and the individuals can, of course, choose what they want to do. It's up to everybody's own choice, of expression. If they want to get in like open discussion or not, it is fine. But for public institutions that are funded by public means, and everybody pays taxes, at least honest people with various needs and abilities, they should get access to art. And this is something, really working with people in the senior houses, I kind of see as an unfair thing that they are locked away and not being able to really use the same public services that we all do, and they have also really helped our society to be built. So thank you. Thank you all for joining us. And this was the discussion, but our institution, MP Lab, Art Research Lab, often organizes also workshops, and I think we will need to tackle these design issues also more practically in the future, and hopefully we will manage to do this in near future. So thank you for joining, and have a nice evening. It's late already. Bye-bye.